and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Higgins.
It is great to be back with you on The Simple Truth, where we proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of Saint Joseph. It is Current Events Wednesday, and our guest today is Dawn Eskew. She is Secretary of Personhood Education for Personhood Alliance, personhood.org, also the founder of Personhood New York, personhoodeducationnewyork.com. That's personhoodeducationni.com. Dawn Eskew coming to us today, I believe, from New York. Welcome to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, a great blessing to have you with us. Very excited to have you here to tackle our topic today, recognizing preborn personhood in 2022. We're going to get into the U.S. Supreme Court on Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, the possible scenarios of advancing toward an end to abortion in a possible soon-to-be post-Roe world, the vital importance of understanding human personhood, how to help enshrine this foundational truth into the hearts and minds of all, as well as the upcoming International Gift of Life Walk in New York City on March 25th. This and so much more. But first, it's always important that we begin the Current Events Wednesday show by remembering that the biggest current event of all, and the number one news story that ought to be reported by all the networks but is going unreported today and every day, and that is the ongoing daily government-sanctioned, government-funded, government-protected mass murder of innocent children in the wombs of their mothers. These are real people being murdered by the thousands today and every day in our nation, which also means the mass exploitation of pregnant moms in need for profit by the lie of abortion. In terms of the loss of human life, we have at least a 9/11 every day in the U.S. Imagine 3,000 of any other category of persons being murdered in a given day in our nation, and it going unreported by the media and even mostly ignored by the churches. And then imagine if that were happening every day, and you begin to understand something of the insane reality in which we find ourselves. According to a July 2020 article in the prestigious peer-reviewed medical journal The Lancet, we have a global death toll from abortion of 73.3 million children annually, which is more than 200,000 preborn children being murdered worldwide every day. It is essential that we put great effort into breaking through our own desensitization to this massive evil. We have to face reality on this and so much more. We must live, proclaim, and push forward the vision that every innocent human being, without exception, has a right to life. Even an atheist still ought to have the basic moral sense to see the evil of killing an innocent child. And for those who believe in Jesus and His Catholic Church, we have the additional benefit of crystal clear, authoritative magisterial teaching on this, which truly gives us absolutely no place to hide in treating those in the womb as any less valuable than us. Catechism of the Catholic Church 2270, quote, "Human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception, meaning fertilization. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent human being to life," end of quote. Also, if you've experienced abortion in some way as a mother, father, sibling, grandparent, etc., there are some great people, great resources available to help you in your healing process. We love you. You are not alone. Go to loveillendchildkilling.com. Click on the healing tab for more information. Dawn Eskew, founder of Personhood New York. What jumps out to you as you hear that introduction?
So you mentioned I think you mentioned the Dobbs versus Jackson case, and how on both sides people are waiting to see what that decision is, and we'll have to wait till believe it's June of 2022. Many pro-lifers are excited that perhaps Roe v. Wade will finally be overturned. However, we must keep in mind that even if that is done, that really isn't going to end abortion across the United States. That is, as of right now, we have to keep working to end abortion in each state. So for me in New York, even if Roe v. Wade is overturned nationally, my work still continues at the same status. We are trying to define the preborn child, we like to say preborn child, as a person. And so our work will continue. Yes, it's a beautiful thing if at the national level our justices make that decision. And I believe if that were to happen, God will provide us mercy and some graces to help the rest of us achieve the personhood of preborn children at every state. I believe that, but the work doesn't change.
Right. Yeah. And I want to get into some of the details on that in a bit. But first, if we can, I think, take a step back and just understand for those that are listening that may not be aware, just what is human personhood? Why is it so vitally important for us to understand this foundational truth?
Yes. So it is a foundational truth, which is an inalienable right given to humanity by God. But during the case of Roe v. Wade, when the justices were trying to make a decision on what to do, those people who were against the legalization of abortion and are called pro-lifers, they were intently watching the case, and it was Justice Blackmun who told Sarah Whittington, who wanted abortion. Anyway, Justice Blackmun told Sarah Whittington that, you would have a terrible time trying to convince this court about abortion if the child in the womb was defined as a person. And she agreed. She said, yes, I would have a terrible time. And so with that, the justices seem to find within the penumbra of the Constitution to be able to decide the way they decided, that the unborn child did not have the right to life. But it was at that point the pro-life people said, well, there's our strategy. We need to define the unborn child as a person.
Mm-hmm. So basically, when when any human being is being defined in any other way than being a human person, then that means they can be stripped of their humanity. They can be dehumanized. It's a way of dehumanizing someone to say, well, they're a human being scientifically, but this philosophical idea of personhood, that's something different, and therefore they may not have that. And so because of that, then we can do this and that with them, and it's a way to dehumanize somebody. But isn't it just as simple as saying every human being is a human person? We heard in the open the authoritative doctrine of the Catholic Church, which is right on, as it always is. Let me just read it one more time. Catechism of the Catholic Church 2270. Human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception, meaning fertilization. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent human being to life, end of quote. So there it is. That's really what we're talking about, right? That every human being is a human person, and to say otherwise is to do some philosophical gymnastics in order to dehumanize someone.
Right. So the Catholic Church, of course, is correct. However, during the time of Roe v. Wade, people seem to say that science didn't prove when human life began. Even though Alveda King had mentioned, Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Martin Luther King, she said that there was a doctor who told her, yes, that even before Roe v. Wade was on trial, that science did teach life began at the moment of conception. However, it wasn't really out there in the public. So some people like to rely that life does not begin at conception, but it does. And Lejeune, I think it was Gerard Lejeune, a scientist who did research and found the gene for Down syndrome. He basically said that human life starts at conception, at the moment of conception, and all the DNA for a human being is present at that moment. So one of the things I wanted to mention is that, yes, for Catholics, we are taught that. My organization is faith-based, Christ-centered. Much of what we teach comes from Catholic encyclicals. But we're not considered Catholic. And I will come back and finish up with what I was going to say about that.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a lot to get to today. We are going to hear an audio clip of what Dawn was laying out for us, some of the audio right from Roe v. Wade, from the oral arguments there. We're going to be able to hear that and talk about that a little bit further. But also, yes, why, I want to ask Dawn about why, in her opinion, is the Catholic Church, that clearly has the truth on this, why is the Catholic Church then so, by and large, incredibly quiet and passive about that truth that we have, while hundreds of thousands of the least of these are being dehumanized and murdered every day worldwide? Don't we have the gravest obligation of all, we who know this truth rock solid, to be proclaiming it from the rooftops day in and day out, and using the full influence at our disposal to end the ongoing daily mass murder of the preborn? We'll be right back.
This is Franciscan Media's Saint of the Day for February 2nd. Today we celebrate the presentation of the Lord. 40 days ago, we celebrated the birth of Jesus. Today, we mark the presentation of the infant Jesus in the temple. According to Mosaic law, a woman was considered ritually unclean for 40 days following childbirth. At that point, she was expected to present herself to the priests at the temple and offer sacrifice to mark her purification. Actually, anyone who had brushed against mystery, birth or death, was similarly excluded from Jewish worship. Today's feast is as much a celebration of Jesus' first appearance in the temple as Mary's purification. In Luke's Gospel, Jesus was welcomed in the temple by Simeon and Anna, who acknowledged the infant as the long-awaited Messiah. From what we know, the Feast of the Presentation was observed in the Western Church as early as the end of the 4th century, though likely much earlier, when gala processions recalled the introduction of Christ into the house of God. In the early 8th century, Pope Sergius inaugurated a candlelight procession as part of the observance. At the end of the same century, the blessing and distribution of candles became part of the celebration, giving the feast its popular name, Candlemas. There's more about the saints along with inspiration and Catholic resources at our website, saintoftheday.org. From Franciscan Media, this has been Saint of the Day.
Do you love listening to the Station of the Cross on your car radio, but sometimes find yourself driving outside the listening area? Never miss another minute of your favorite show. Download the iCatholic Radio app so you can listen anywhere in the world 24 hours a day. The iCatholic Radio app is available for your phone in the Apple Store or for your Android phone in Google Play. Visit thestationofthecross.com for more information.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. It is Current Events Wednesday, and our guest is Dawn Eskew. She is Secretary of Personhood Education for Personhood Alliance, personhood.org, also founder of Personhood New York, personhoodeducationny.com. We are talking about recognizing preborn personhood in 2022. And Dawn, I want to follow up with what we were talking about in that at the end of that first segment. Why, in your opinion, is the Catholic Church, that has the truth on this, by and large, so incredibly quiet and passive about that truth, while hundreds of thousands of the least of these are being dehumanized and murdered every day worldwide? What is your take on it?
You know, I wish I had an answer, but I don't. There have been some theories that have been presented to me from other people, but those theories are a little controversial, so I would prefer not to mention them here. I don't know, and it has made my work difficult as a Catholic in trying to get the word out on personhood and to teach. So,
and it's a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things somebody told me that it might have to do with some of the writings of Thomas Aquinas. His writings was that the soul did not infuse in the body of an infant until, for a boy, it would be 4 months, and for a girl would be 6 months. That was part of his writings. Right. So some people are saying that's possible, but I don't think that's a reason to tell you the truth.
That's the Nancy. That's the Nancy Pelosi excuse, right? She'll maybe mention Aquinas, she'll say Augustine. I mean, it's like, okay, Nancy Pelosi wants to make arguments from the church fathers and from St. Thomas Aquinas. I don't think she really wants to do that, because we know that abortion has been talked about as a grave evil from the very beginning by the Catholic Church, and even if there was some jostling, some argumentation about, well, how does the science really play out here? We know now that how the science plays out, that a human being is human from the very beginning of fertilization. And we're going to get to that science in a minute. The science is clear now. So yeah, you'll hear some people try to hide behind that sort of a thing, but that is a flimsy excuse at best. But let's go to that audio that you mentioned. Let's let people hear this in case maybe they've never heard this before, and understand that personhood really is at the core of all of this. We have audio from the oral arguments of Roe v. Wade in 1973 that points to defining the personhood of the preborn as the key to guaranteeing their protection in law. Here it is.
And the basic constitutional question initially is whether or not an unborn fetus is a person, isn't it? It's critical to this case.
Yes, it is.
If it were established that an unborn fetus is a person within the protection of the 14th Amendment, you would have almost an impossible case here, would you not?
I would have a very difficult case.
You certainly would.
Could Texas constitutionally, in your view, declare that by statute that a fetus is a person for all constitutional purposes?
The state could obviously adopt that kind of statute, and then the question would have to be adjudicated.
All right, so we heard there Justice Potter Stewart. We also heard pro-abortion attorney Sarah Weddington, then Chief Justice Berger, and then Weddington again. Don, you've already talked a little bit about what you make of that audio, but doesn't this make it clear? Doesn't it make sense that this would be the focus, personhood, human personhood, from conception, fertilization, that would be the focus of any so-called pro-life movement that is serious about guaranteeing the legal protection of every preborn child?
Yes, it's very clear. I would like to mention that one of our spokespersons for Personhood Education New York from a few years back was Josh Craddock. And he later left us because he was accepted into Harvard Law School. And he did a paper, his final paper was about abortion and the 14th Amendment. And I would like to mention that in his study, he presented that some of the states had already defined the unborn child as a person in their law. So it was already it was a given. It wasn't always written as a law for other states, although some already did have it, but it was a given. It was a known that the unborn child was a person. It just wasn't written down, except for a few states. So I wanted to point that out.
And let me just ask you this very clearly: is since this makes sense that this would be the key of any pro-life movement, I have to ask you: well, has it been? Has what we have known as the pro-life movement in the U.S. since 1973? Have they made personhood its focus? What would you say to that?
Yeah. Okay. So. Absolutely. From the very beginning, personhood was the strategy. And those people, the leaders for personhood, were people like Nellie Gray, who formed the March for Life. She was dissatisfied how some groups were not focusing on personhood. She stepped aside and she says, well, I am for personhood and I'm going to do what I can. So she did the March for Life, and every year when she was living, she announced the principles of life at the beginning of her walk, and it mentioned personhood. There are recordings of that. You can hear what the principles are. They might be written somewhere. Another leader for personhood was Judy Brown. She did not go along with some of the pro-life groups that started following Roe v. Wade. And so she formed American Life League to do her best to educate the country. There are other leaders, but off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Nellie Gray and Judy Brown that I think most people know about.
Right.
So yes, personhood was the original strategy, and there are some groups that pulled away from that in order to compromise. But as you and I know, you never compromise. And even the military never compromises with the enemy. And I'm saying those who push the culture of death is an enemy to human life. Mm-hmm. And you cannot compromise. You must teach the truth, because it's consistent with the pro-life movement. I'll say one thing, the rape exceptions. We teach about why you should not have the rape exceptions. And we have good arguments to keep rape exceptions out of bills. And one of the best arguments is that why should an innocent child suffer a death penalty for their parents? And that's in the Bible. You never, a child should not suffer the consequences for the mistakes of their parents. And the error of the parent would be the biological father that conceives a child from rape.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, absolutely. And so with the exception of pro-life leaders, these pro-life giants like Nellie Gray and Judy Brown and others who have pushed for personhood at the forefront, that's been the core. There are many, many others, right, that do not see it that way and have not put it at the core. So must we conclude then that the bulk of the pro-life movement in the U.S. that has not been putting personhood at the core, have they not been serious about guaranteeing the legal protection of every preborn child? Do they have some other goal in mind? I'm sure you've thought about this. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I do have thoughts, and that's one of the big things. You would have to think about, are they sincere? I don't know. You would wonder if they are or not, but I think they are fooled, that they think that they could protect more babies even if they have a rape exception in a bill. However, if you have a law, say the heartbeat bill, I believe there's the heartbeat bill in Georgia, which made a lot of noise across the country and caused Netflix to say they will they will pull out of Georgia because Georgia Right to Life is a personhood organization. They did not support the heartbeat bill because there was a rape exceptions in it. People say, well, if you pass that bill, you will save many lives. But you and I know that a woman, if she wants an abortion and may not have conceived in rape, but will go to Planned Parenthood and say she conceived in rape, Planned Parenthood does not report it. There have been studies through Lila Rose, who has done her investigative studies. They do not report, and they don't even report if the person is a minor. And I mean, I know many states allow, like New York State, a minor to go in. But when Roe v. Wade occurred, Planned Parenthood would not vet out the women who come in that are minors. Those minors would still get an abortion in New York State before New York State allowed minors to, when Planned Parenthood has to report to the parents. I forget what you call that, but anyway,
Sure.
I'm losing my. I got off on a tangent. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, the parental notification. No, yeah. Let me ask it to you this way as well, by way of follow up, because it seems to me that we can say yes to laws that are going to be better than what we have, while at the same time proclaiming the truth about personhood and being very loud about it, because that's what's going to change hearts and minds. There are people that have never heard this basic, simple truth before. Every human being is a human person, and the science is that human beings begin at conception, fertilization. People just need to hear that over and over and over again. But if people are saying, well, hold on, let's not talk about that because that might hurt our ability to pass some sort of a bill that's going to just get it going in a different direction, build some momentum, all of that, that would be the problem, right? So we can pass better legislation without passing perfect legislation, but we better be at the same time never surrendering for a second from proclaiming the goal, which is every human being has a right to life because every human being is a human person. Is that a good way to say it? How would you add or subtract from that?
Listen, at this point, we need to be teaching our youth the truth. And if you have laws that say it's okay to kill a child from rape, we're not teaching our youth the truth. Our youth needs to teach the truth, and so do our laws.
Yes, very good. Yes, we are with Dawn Eskew. She is founder of Personhood New York. We are getting some serious points out there that we need to grapple with in 2022. Dobbs v. Jackson, women's health. The ruling is going to come down sometime soon this year. We're going to talk about that when we get back and hear a clip from the oral arguments there, get Dawn's response on personhood with regard to that and so much more. We also have an important event to let you know about, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you holding on to an old car or truck because you think dealers won't want it? Then consider donating it to the Station of the Cross Catholic Radio Network. This is a great way to turn your unvalued vehicle into a powerful gift for Catholic radio. You'll be taking part in our evangelization efforts to continue spreading Christ's love throughout the world. Our Lord uses Catholic radio to draw more people to himself, and one of the best ways to support the Station of the Cross is by contributing to our vehicle donation program. The process is safe and simple. Your generosity will greatly benefit our mission to bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners. To find out more or to donate your vehicle today, visit thestationofthecross.com or call 1-866-628-CARS. That's thestationofthecross.com or 1-866-628-2277.
The Station of the Cross thanks our financial supporters who have enabled us to broadcast Catholic programs for more than 20 years. As a nonprofit lay organization not affiliated with your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported. Through your generosity, we're able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel message and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments. Thank you for your continued support, and may God bless you and your family.
You can listen to any of our network-produced programs at your convenience, wherever you enjoy podcasts. Hear a powerful sermon you need to share with a loved one? Maybe there's a guest or teaching segment that deserves another listen. You can find all of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, our website, and the free iCatholic Radio app. Be uplifted in your faith. Listen today at thestationofthecross.com or on your favorite podcasting platform.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here on this Current Events Wednesday with our guest, Dawn Eskew. She is Secretary of Personhood Education for Personhood Alliance, personhood.org, also founder of Personhood New York, personhoodeducationny.com, talking about recognizing preborn personhood in 2022. And certainly at the heart of that is the Supreme Court case Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health. Oral arguments took place back on December 1st. And a ruling is expected most likely in June, but speculation has been as early as possibly in March. We'll see, but here is just a quick taste of it where the subject of personhood came up in those oral arguments. This is Justice Samuel Alito, and you're also going to hear Scott Stewart, Mississippi Solicitor General, in this clip. Here it is.
They're secular philosophers and bioethicists who take the position that the rights of personhood begin at conception or at some point other than viability?
I believe so. I mean, I think there's a wide array, of people of kind of all different views and of no faith views who would reasonably have that view, Your Honor. It's not tied to a religious view, and I don't think, were it otherwise, this court's jurisprudence on this issue would run right into some of its religious exercise jurisprudence.
All right, Dawn Eskew, founder of Personhood New York. What is your response as you hear that? What were your thoughts when you heard that exchange?
It's definitely not based on religion. It is science. It is definitely science. And it's been taught. They knew about DNA in the 50s, maybe earlier than that. All the DNA is there at the moment of conception. And you don't have to find that in religion, although Catholic Church does teach it, as you mentioned.
Right, but as a matter of natural law, not even necessarily a matter of religion, but just a scientific and then a philosophical fact, right? That again, human life begins at conception, fertilization, and every human being is a human person. Therefore, under no way can we say this is not a human person and therefore we can murder them at will. No, it doesn't work that way. And let me just play one last clip, and this I think will drive it home for our listeners. This is the scientific aspect of it, and speaking to it is a woman by the name of Brooke Stanton. She is founder of Contend Projects, which is a secular, nonpartisan science education nonprofit. You can find them at contendprojects.org. But here she is talking about the scientific fact. Here it is.
A new human being, a new whole individual living human being begins to exist at the beginning of the process of fertilization. At first contact between the sperm and the oocyte, when these two mere cells make first contact, immediately, specifically, human enzymes and proteins, whole human organism enzymes and proteins, not sperm and oocyte enzymes and proteins, are produced. And a new single-cell human being with his or her own new unique DNA immediately begins to exist.
Again, that's contendprojects.org. They have sheets that can be put up in any classroom, any science classroom. Highly recommend their work, contendprojects.org. Everybody should know about this. Our young people should know about this. We can get this information in the schools. It is a scientific fact, not a religious belief, that human life begins at conception, fertilization, and then we can't let them off the hook with this lie that somehow you can be a human being and not be a human person, and then we can dehumanize people and murder them or enslave them or whatever we want to do. No, every human being is a human person. It is that simple, and children can understand this very, very well. It's adults with evil agendas or that have their minds upside down that are the ones that have difficult time with all of this stuff. But Dawn, what is your thought on those oral arguments? It seemed to me that Justice Alito and others were almost fishing, trying to get Scott Stewart, the Mississippi Solicitor General, to make the scientific argument, to talk about then personhood. He seemed to not want to go there. That was my impression. What impression did you have when you were watching it?
Yes, I had the same impression. Absolutely. Some people like to say that we don't listen to science. However, here is science, black and white. You can't change it, and you can't just keep saying it's religion. It's not. Yes, religion is one of the driving forces for many people, but there are atheists who are also, there's the organization called PAW, P-A-U-W. She's a woman that is an atheist and against abortion. Why? Science is there. And I'm sure she has other reasons, but that has to come from science.
Mm-hmm. What are you expecting? What do you think is the most likely ruling that we're going to see? And what are you hoping for when the ruling does come down?
I am hoping that the justice system will make the right decision and say Roe v. Wade, that decision was an error. They like to say that they found a reason to support that decision within the penumbra. Those were the words, that's the word that was used. It wasn't even written, but they said within the penumbra. I studied a law class in my bioethics studies, and we went through Roe v. Wade. And in doing that, I was very surprised, as were the other students in my class, how it was a total setup, Roe v. Wade. And I hope and pray that our justices do the right thing this time.
Yeah, let's put the phone number out there. If anybody has any comments, questions today, now's a great time to call 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. Talking about personhood today and really proclaiming it, recognizing preborn personhood in 2022. It is time. We've got to be loud and clear about it to change some hearts and minds, which is something that is a big part of the event that you have coming up, Dawn. This is the 2022 International Gift of Life Walk in New York City, coming up on Friday, March 25th. There's a rally at 11 a.m. Grand Marshal Father Bouquet, who is president of Human Life International. What more can you tell us about this great event coming up?
Okay, so this great event, we set it for March 25. That was a significant date for John Paul II, who dedicated that date as the International Day of the Unborn Child. And he said that that date should be set aside everywhere for us to recognize the dignity of the human person. That's also the date that he published
Evangelium Vitae, the Gospel of Life. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. He also published that on that date. That's also the date of the Annunciation of Our Lady and the Incarnation of our Lord. Based on talking about the Incarnation of our Lord and Catholic teaching, we were taught that the soul gives life to the body. So at the moment of conception, you have life. So the soul must be infused. We are also taught that Jesus is like us in every way, except he was also God. So if he was present at the moment of conception, we should be a person at the moment of conception. So I think that date has so much meaning it gives us the opportunity to teach about personhood and connecting us to our dignity, because we are made in the image and likeness of God. The fact that the incarnation of Jesus, that is what connects his humanity to our humanity and our humanity to God.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so this rally beginning at 11 a.m., what is important for people to understand about gathering for this rally? What is the impact that you're hoping to make in New York City on that day?
So, like John Paul II, he wrote, "I propose a day for life to be celebrated each year in every country as already established by some Episcopal conferences. The celebration of this day should be planned and carried out with the active participation of all sectors of the local church. Its primary purpose should be to foster individual consciences in families, in the church, and in the individual civil societies, and recognition of the meaning and value of human life at every station and every condition." That is written Evangelium Vitae 85, section 85. So we are hoping to get the churches more involved. For those people who may not be able to get out, we are hoping that churches will have maybe exposition of the Holy Eucharist for people to pray and to bring attention to the dignity of the human person. We are also hoping at the walk to remind everyone of their human dignity and that they began at the moment of conception. But also, yes, abortion is the core of this movement of Personhood Education New York and of the walk. However, just like Evangelium Vitae, John Paul II listed different stations of life to be respected. And so with that, we also welcome people of different stations of life to join the walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, very good. And, what is your thought on how we can best enshrine this foundational truth of human personhood in the hearts and minds of all? It is important, obviously, with respect to abortion, this ongoing daily mass murder of the preborn when it's being not held up in law that children are persons from conception, fertilization, and so therefore we have this ongoing mass murder. But we also have other big problems, horrible evils that take place when we don't have the truth about the human person enshrined into law. Can you speak to some of that and how we can just help people to understand this and to change hearts and minds?
Yes. So at the very bottom is prayer. We must pray. We must include God in everything. We must hand our troubles, those things we can't do ourselves, we hand it over to God and ask for his help. That's at the very, very basic. We can't do anything without God. The other way is, for me, Personhood. I set up Personhood in order to get the word out and teach. We have a program called the Pillars of Personhood, and we go on college campuses. One of the things that is very interesting is that our youth, they don't know when life begins. They don't know when human life begins. And one of the things we do mention to them to drive the point home about personhood, to change hearts and minds. You can say we're human, but then there's a loud voice in the background that tells you otherwise. Well, you need abortion for whatever. I'm not going to say here, but you have to point to, which is what we do. We point to other times in history when a human being is not considered a person, like with the Black Americans, when they weren't considered persons, they did not have all their rights and they died. For Jewish people during the times of Nazi, they were not considered persons. what happened to them? They died. When a human being is not defined as a person, human beings die. And there are things set up in society to allow for that to happen, and that has got to end.
Yeah, as simple as it gets. We are in a world that has gone insane. We must come back to our senses and get this right from the very ground up. Share this with your young people. We'll be right back with much more. Stay tuned.
In the New Testament's first letter of St. John, chapter 5, verses 14 and 15, we read, "And we have this confidence in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us in regard to whatever we ask, we know that what we have asked him for is ours." It's incredible to realize how much God loves us, what he has promised us, and what he'll give us through our trust in him. Have you prayed for the Station of the Cross today? We would be grateful if you would remember us each day in your prayers, whether it's the Most Holy Rosary of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, the Liturgy of the Hours, the Most Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, or any other prayers you pray throughout the day. Please also pray for the intentions of your fellow Catholic radio listeners. It's so important for us to remember to keep one another in prayer.
Hello, this is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. Some abortion supporters who don't like the statistics that African American women have a higher abortion rate claim that abortions among non-blacks aren't being adequately reported. But this shows a lack of awareness of how the abortion industry operates. The statistics coming from the abortion industry show a better picture of how many abortions occur than statistics from the government. And they show the discrepancy among blacks. This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life.
Bring many more people closer to our Lord by letting them know about Catholic Radio. One of the simplest ways to promote Catholic Radio is by displaying a bumper magnet on your car. Order your free bumper magnets at thestationofthecross.com. We'd be happy to send bumper magnets for your listening area so that others can come to know the Lord. That's thestationofthecross.com. Thank you for sharing Catholic Radio on the road.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Current Events Wednesday. Our guest is Dawn Eskew. She is Secretary of Personhood Education for Personhood Alliance, personhood.org. Also founder of Personhood New York. You can go to personhoodeducationny.com for more information. And you can also register for the upcoming Gift of Life Walk in New York City coming up Friday, March 25th. The rally begins at 11 a.m. You can register at personhoodeducationny.com. It says, bring your banners, bring your families, but most of all, bring your flame of love, because this is about conversion of hearts and minds. The Grand Marshal is going to be Father Bouquet of President of Human Life International. Going to be a great event coming up March 25th. Again, you can register by going to personhoodeducationny.com. Dawn, as we get into this final segment, would you mind just sharing perhaps for us a little bit of your personal story in terms of how did you get involved with all of this? That there are so many who don't get involved really in any way, or maybe in a small way, but you have really jumped in on this and really tried to do what you can to help people to understand personhood and to fight for the right to life for every innocent human being, every innocent human person. What is it that struck you? How did you get involved in all this?
I'll have to say it started because I was at home. I was homeschooling my children. And when they get older, they don't need as much as my time. But I happen to find an article online about a success. So first of all, I have to say I'm a chemist. And I worked as a chemist, and then when I started having children, I left that work. But as a chemist, when you're doing research, you look for a success. If you see a blip of success, then what you want to do is you want to narrow down the focus on that success and say, okay, what happened? What produced that success? Can we do it again? Can we make it better? Can we make the blip bigger? So with that in mind, when I saw an article about a success, I believe it was either North or South Dakota. This might have been back in 2008 or 2009, where a personhood bill was presented, and you have the House and the Senate. So one side passed it. It stayed for 3 weeks, but the other side did not pass it so that it could become a law. That was the first time I ever heard of a personhood bill and a success as far as ending abortion. From there, I kept, and the name of that organization was a personhood organization. I kept my eye on that organization. I followed them, and eventually I volunteered to be a leader in New York State. I didn't do anything because I didn't know what to do, but I was the appointed leader. I volunteered as that leader. After that, I was called in a little bit more and asked to attend some meeting in New York City and represent Personhood New York. And I did, and I got a bunch of people who supported Personhood, about 10 people, and went to that meeting. From there, and that's it. That's all that happened. From there, I also got more, now that my children were out of school, into college, I had more time on my hands, and I got more involved with my church. I volunteered to help set up the World Apostolate of Fatima, which in some people might remember it as the Blue Army, headquartered in New Jersey. I helped set it up in my diocese, and I am still a board member of the World Apostolate of Fatima. But in learning about the messages of Fatima, I then started teaching about the messages of Fatima, and we had a spiritual director. Father Andrew Apostoli was our spiritual director. He wrote a book and in his book, it was called Fatima for Today. And in that book, he said that the culture of death is the remnant of communism. And I just found that so interesting. So I knew about personhood. I knew about the work that was going on, but I started to feel a call to do something more, and to do something more with personhood. I contacted the field director of that personhood organization. His name is Dan Becker. I said, I think I'd like to do something more and get Personhood New York set up officially in New York State. And he guided me, and so from there, we got it set up. I do have to say, New York State is such a dark state. I would find a pro-life attorney, but I would not find a pro-life attorney that would help me get personhood set up. I looked for 2 years. I finally contacted the Judy Brown office. I said, do you know of an attorney in New York State to help me get personhood set up? And they said, contact Thomas More Society in Illinois. That would be Tom Breaker. He's the founder of Thomas Law Society. And we finally connected, and Tom Breaker said, not only will I help you find an attorney, but I will pay the fees to help you get set up. And that's because that's how much he believed. He's like the top constitutional attorney, pro-life attorney in the United States. And he supports the personhood mission. So that's how we got set up. And with that, I knew that was divine providence, because here I am not knowing what to do, but I did tell Our Lady, I put it all in your hands. I will take the first step, and if nothing happens, I'm off the hook. But if it's a real calling, you will help me. And she has helped me. So we now have the 501c3, Personhood Education New York, under which the walk occurs in New York City. We have a 501c4 set up where we affect legislation, and we do have a bill, our first bill that just entered this past September. We have a number for it. I'm going to tell you the number. It's Assembly number 8277. Now, if you look that up, you will see that there is an error in the bill. That's not how we composed the bill. When we handed it in, someone else put some language in and changed it. And so right now it reflects an error. It says that at 6 days, a heartbeat exists. This bill is not a heartbeat bill. It's not our original language. I don't know what's going on, but that's one of the fights we have to do. Even at everything we do with personhood, it's a struggle. But we know God, little by little, will help us. And finally, I want to add that we most recently have our bylaws for Personhood New York political action campaign. So those people who are running for office, if they're on Personhood, we will endorse them. Of course, we have to do a survey, we have to interview them, we have to vet them. But I will say, we've had someone that we got behind. So it is doable, even in New York State, which is very dark. So little by little, we're making advances for personhood.
Yes, very, very powerful. Dawn Eskew, Secretary of Personhood Education for Personhood Alliance. Again, personhood.org, also founder of Personhood New York, personhoodeducationny.com. You can also register for the Gift of Life Walk in New York City at that website as well. Dawn, it's been a great blessing to have you with us. You are doing great, phenomenal work, and I hope that many have been inspired, motivated, encouraged by you and what you have shared with us today. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Anyone who wants to volunteer, please contact me. Go to the website, contact me, or anywhere in the United States. You can contact me, and I'll hook you up with the National to get personhood set up in your state. Thank you so much, Jim.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, and that's personhoodeducationny.com.
My name is Nathan Wigfield,